Chosen one, there will come a time when you hear voices that sound divine, yet something deep within you knows they are not. They come wrapped in light, carrying words that feel almost right, but not quite. They echo the truth, but distort it just enough to confuse your heart. That is the danger of this season, the one where your spirit has grown powerful enough to hear both realms clearly. You are closer to heaven than ever before, but also more visible to deception. Not every voice speaking peace is from heaven, and not every sign that shines carries divine truth. The higher you climb, the more convincing the imitations become. This is the season where your discernment will protect you more than your faith, because real light does not shout, it hums softly, steadily like truth that never changes tone. Before we continue, take a deep breath. This message found you for a reason. Watch it until the end, because somewhere within these words, a door will open inside your awareness. And as you do, I want you to take a moment and write your warmest wishes and 777 in the comments. Let it be more than a number. Let it be your affirmation to heaven that you are choosing alignment, clarity, and truth. When you write 777, you're declaring to the universe that you only accept messages that carry peace, not pressure. You're anchoring your spirit in truth, saying, I am ready to hear clearly. I am ready to filter energy through light. And as you do, something shifts around you. Confusion lifts, the noise fades, and every false vibration loses its access to your frequency. This is your moment of energetic protection. Now listen carefully, because this truth will follow you everywhere. The closer you move toward divine purpose, the more the enemy tries to sound like heaven. The voices that once tempted you with chaos will start speaking peace. The distractions that once came through noise will now come through quiet. You will hear messages that seem kind but carry compromise. You will sense guidance that feels right in the mind but wrong in the soul. This is why discernment is not optional, it's essential. You cannot rely solely on how something looks or sounds anymore. You must feel its vibration. The real voice of heaven never contradicts peace, and it never rushes you. When the divine speaks, it steadies your heartbeat. When imitation speaks, it stirs your anxiety and makes you question what you already know. The most dangerous deception is not darkness, it's light without depth. False guidance imitates divine rhythm, but lacks divine presence. It will quote truth but remove love. It will promise clarity but leave you with exhaustion. It will ask you to perform, to prove, to strive, to earn what's already yours. That's not heaven. Heaven's voice calls you higher but holds you gently. It asks for surrender, not struggle. It confirms what your soul already whispers, not what your fear demands to hear. You'll begin to notice this difference when you slow down and listen beyond the words, because heaven doesn't speak to your mind first, it speaks to your spirit. You've reached a level of spiritual maturity where you can't just listen anymore, you must discern. Every vibration has an origin, every message has a frequency, and every whisper has an agenda. Some are sent to align you, others are sent to distract you. The tricky part: the ones meant to deceive you will often come dressed as divine opportunities. They'll speak your language, they'll reference your purpose, they'll sound just right enough to slip through the cracks of your focus. That's why stillness is your shield. When you pause before reacting, you let energy reveal itself. Real truth sustains peace. False truth collapses under silence. Sometimes the wrong voice will even speak through people you love. They'll say words that sound supportive but are coated with doubt. They'll tell you to play it safe when heaven told you to move. They'll speak from fear, not faith. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse their caution for divine counsel. But remember this, the divine will never speak through fear. It doesn't shrink you, it expands you. The voice of heaven brings courage, even when it warns you. It leads you gently into alignment, not anxiety. It doesn't pressure you to move, it prepares you to. You may ask yourself, how do I know the difference? The answer lies in your body. The divine always speaks peace into your nervous system. Even when the message challenges you, you'll feel a strange calm inside. Your breath slows, your chest loosens, and your spirit expands. That's confirmation. But when imitation speaks, you'll feel tightening in your chest, a rush of thoughts, an urge to act before you understand. That's not heaven, that's manipulation disguised as urgency. If it rushes you, it's not divine. If it confuses you, it's not aligned. This is why silence is sacred now. You need time between what you hear and how you respond. Heaven doesn't require your reaction, it requires your recognition. You'll notice that real divine instructions don't lose their power when you pause. They wait patiently. They feel the same tomorrow as they did today. False voices, however, lose strength when you don't engage. They fade quickly because they depend on your attention to survive. The moment you stop feeding confusion with curiosity, it starves. In this season, every whisper will try to sound like a revelation. Every dream will try to pose as prophecy. Every feeling will try to act like guidance. But your job is not to believe everything, it's to observe and feel. Not every open door is an invitation. Some are traps dressed as timing. The universe will test whether you've learnt to distinguish between signs and distractions. The sign from heaven leads you to peace. The sign from deception leads you to exhaustion. And you, chosen one, have reached the stage where heaven trusts you to know the difference. You'll feel the pressure to listen to everything and everyone, especially when silence feels like a void. But that void is not emptiness, it's protection. The divine often hides its clearest instructions in quiet moments. That's where imitation cannot reach. So when the world gets loud and everyone claims to have a message for you, step back. Retreat into peace. The right voice will always wait for you to be ready. The wrong ones will demand your urgency. That alone is your filter. You've entered the season where discernment is your language, peace is your compass, and silence is your armor. You're not called to decode every message. You're called to embody truth so deeply that anything false reveals itself by contrast. You won't have to chase signs anymore. They'll chase you because your frequency attracts what's real. This is your awakening, chosen one. Not every voice speaking peace is from heaven, but every test sent to you is from it. Heaven is teaching you how to hear clearly in a world full of echoes. The divine wants your clarity sharpened, your intuition trained, and your awareness unshakable. This isn't just about avoiding deception, it's about mastering vibration. You're learning to move like light, to feel before you decide, to trust before you see, and soon you won't just recognize heaven's voice, you'll become fluent in it, because when the world speaks chaos, heaven whispers peace. And you, now fully awake, will always know which one to follow. When you finally start listening with your spirit instead of your ears, the world sounds different. You begin to notice how many voices never carried heaven's frequency in the first place. They weren't evil, they were empty. They spoke from human fear, not divine truth. They carried emotion, not revelation, and you can feel it now, can't you? The subtle vibration behind every word, the energy behind every promise, the silence between every sentence. You've stepped into awareness, and awareness doesn't just hear, it feels. You've stopped reacting to words and started decoding energy. That is where real discernment lives. You start realizing that deception rarely arrives as darkness. It arrives as distraction, soft, familiar, and comforting. It comes through advice that sounds wise but weakens your spirit. It comes through encouragement that pushes you toward fear, disguised as safety. You'll even notice how certain messages seem to echo what you prayed for, but they carry a faint distortion, just enough to pull your alignment a few degrees off course. That's the danger of half-truths. They mimic heaven's tone but lack its peace. Heaven's guidance never feels rushed, never feels forced, never confuses your intuition. When the divine speaks, there's weight and clarity behind it. When Imitation speaks. It leaves you asking questions you didn't have before. This is where many chosen ones stumble, mistaking noise for guidance. They confuse emotional resonance with divine confirmation. They hear something that feels right because it matches their desire, not their destiny. Your spirit knows better. Heaven doesn't feed the hunger of the moment, it nurtures the purpose of eternity. The real voice will never tell you what you want to hear just to comfort you. It will speak what you need to hear to prepare you. That's how you recognize it. The false voice flatters. The divine voice focuses. The false one excites your emotions. The divine one anchors your soul. And now you're starting to master this separation. You've learned to let your peace become your filter. You ask yourself, does this bring stillness or stir chaos? And instantly, you know, that's divine intelligence, that's spiritual maturity. You no longer depend on confirmation from others. You depend on the calm that follows obedience. The divine doesn't argue for your attention. It settles in your awareness. It doesn't need repetition. It echoes once and stays. You're learning to recognize that still echo. The shift becomes clear when you realize not every comforting voice is safe. Some people speak calm but carry confusion. They speak softly but leave you spiritually drained. They promise light yet feed your dependence on them. The true voice of heaven leads you back to self-trust, not self-doubt. It doesn't make you rely on intermediaries, it connects you directly to peace. If a message leaves you feeling smaller, guilty, or uncertain, it's not heaven, it's imitation. The divine never diminishes. It refines. It doesn't control your choices, it clarifies them. It doesn't demand your submission. It reminds you of your freedom. And this is the truth that changes everything. Heaven is not the loudest voice, it's the most consistent one. It speaks through timing, not tension. It reveals through peace, not panic. The voice that pushes you to act out of fear isn't from light, it's from illusion. The voice that waits for your stillness before speaking, that's the divine one. You'll know because it doesn't just speak to you, it speaks through you. It doesn't give you anxiety, it gives you authority. Its messages don't expire, they unfold. You begin to notice how divine communication flows differently now. It doesn't arrive in confusion, it arrives through synchronicity. You'll think a thought and see a sign confirming it within hours. You'll ask a question in silence and an answer will reach you through peace. Heaven is no longer trying to get your attention, it's walking with you, step by step. You become sensitive to its rhythm. That's why you can feel when something doesn't belong, even if you can't explain it. Your body feels drained. Your intuition grows tense. Your peace feels interrupted. That's heaven's alarm system. It's saying, this voice isn't mine. There will still be moments when the imitation tries to mimic heaven's comfort, especially in your weakest hours. That's when discernment feels heavy, when silence feels unbearable, when you just want reassurance. That's when deception knocks the loudest. But you'll remember now, heaven doesn't chase, it waits. It doesn't demand attention, it deserves it. If you have to force understanding, it's not divine. If you have to chase clarity, it's not aligned. You'll learn that sometimes the divine response is no response at all. Silence is still an answer, and often it's the loudest one. You're learning to listen through layers now, to hear what's beneath the tone. You can sense when flattery hides manipulation, when comfort hides control, when guidance hides guilt. You've stopped being impressed by eloquence and started being moved by energy. That's evolution. That's the mark of the awakened spirit. You've become immune to superficial spirituality because you've seen too much light to fall for artificial glow. So the next time you hear a voice that claims to be divine but leaves you uneasy, remember this moment. You've trained for it. Your discernment is your armor now. The divine trusts you enough to test you with imitation, knowing you'll pass. You're no longer a seeker of messages, you're a guardian of truth. The voices can keep speaking, but only peace will reach your frequency. Because you've learned, not every voice speaking light carries heaven's breath. And your spirit now knows the difference. When the noise around you begins to fade, you start realizing that true communication with heaven was never about hearing. It was about feeling. It's not in the thunder, it's in the stillness. The messages that are truly divine no longer need words to reach you. They vibrate through your soul like soft light that only you can perceive. You've stopped chasing signs because your whole existence has become one. Every step, every thought, every gentle nudge in your spirit is proof that you've aligned with the frequency of truth. You've learned that heaven's voice isn't external, it's internal. It doesn't echo in your ears, it blooms quietly in your heart. And that's where everything changes. You begin to understand that you are not just someone who receives divine guidance, you are someone who translates it. You've become a vessel, not just a listener. Heaven doesn't shout through you, it flows through you. The more you trust this inner flow, the clearer it becomes. The confusion that once clouded your path dissolves into calm. You no longer wrestle with questions that used to haunt you. You know that when peace answers, it's final. The noise doesn't compete with peace anymore, it bows to it. You can feel the difference in everything now. When a message isn't from heaven, it feels like static, it irritates your spirit, even if it sounds poetic. But when a message is divine, it lands differently. It feels weightless yet powerful, silent yet undeniable. You can't explain why you trust it, you just do. Your intuition no longer asks for proof because it has seen too much to doubt. You realize that heaven never asked you to understand everything. It asked you to trust what you feel when your soul recognizes its tone. The more you live like this, the more you start to see how the world operates in two frequencies, truth and imitation. You walk among both, but you belong to neither. You've transcended the battle between the two by choosing awareness. You don't fight illusions anymore, you simply stop giving them your attention. That's how it is that they lose their power. You've learned that evil doesn't always look dark, it often looks busy. The false voice will flood you with activity to distract you from alignment, but the divine voice gives you stillness that feels like focus. And now that stillness has become your most valuable gift. You no longer fear silence because you've learned that silence is where heaven hides. When life slows down, when messages stop coming, when the air feels quiet and the path looks still, that's when the divine is closest. Heaven doesn't need chaos to speak, it doesn't need repetition to prove itself. It needs quiet hearts, present minds, and open spirits. You're all three, that's why the divine frequency has found a permanent home inside you. You can walk into chaos now and remain untouched. You can listen to 10 different voices and still hear peace louder than all of them. That's mastery. You're not searching for heaven's voice anymore, you're carrying it. You've become the still point in a spinning world. You've realized that hearing from heaven is less about asking and more about allowing. You stopped begging for answers and started embodying them. You don't look for divine timing, it moves through you. You don't look for confirmation, it confirms itself through your peace. You no longer wait for signs, you've become the signal. This transformation makes you untouchable in ways others can't understand. People around you may still chase prophetic words, obsess over synchronicities, or cling to external messages, but you move differently. You don't need to decode life, you live decoded. You've learned that true connection to heaven isn't about collecting revelations, it's about walking in revelation. You wake up with it. You speak it without realizing. You are it. And that scares the false voices because you've made them irrelevant. The more you align with this truth, the more transparent the world becomes. You can see motives without judgment, lies without hatred, manipulation without fear. You don't expose people, you expose energy. You don't confront darkness, you outshine it. That's the power of divine awareness. It doesn't argue, it simply exists at a frequency too high For deception to breathe in, that's what you've become, a vibration that falsehood cannot inhabit. And now, when you hear a voice whispering, you no longer ask, "Is this from heaven?" You simply measure its peace. If it doesn't calm you, it's not divine. If it doesn't align you, it's not real. If it doesn't strengthen your spirit, it doesn't deserve your focus. You trust yourself now, not the version of you built on fear, but the version refined by truth. Heaven speaks through that version. Heaven is that version. You've reached a place few ever do, a life led not by voices but by vibration. You no longer listen outward, you resonate inward. You don't pray for clarity, you embody it. You don't wait for heaven to speak. You've learned that every breath, every pulse, every intuitive whisper is heaven speaking. You're in constant conversation with light now. And the beautiful thing is, you don't even need to speak back. The divine already knows what your silence means, because silence, chosen one, is no longer empty. It's sacred space filled with guidance, protection, and presence. And you have become fluent in that silence. When your spirit learns the difference between noise and guidance, you stop walking with hesitation. Every step feels deliberate now, not because you have all the answers, but because you know who walks with you. You've stopped fearing wrong turns because you've realized there are no wrong turns for those who are aligned. Even the detours carry divine instruction. The voices that once confused you can still speak, but they no longer hold authority. They echo faintly in the background, powerless against the stillness that now rules your heart. You've stopped chasing signs, stopped checking for confirmation, stopped second-guessing your intuition. You found something stronger than proof. You found peace. And when peace becomes your anchor, your life transforms into a message itself. You become the very vibration you once searched for. People feel it before you speak. They may not understand it, but they sense it. The air around you shifts when you enter a room because energy always recognizes its source. You've aligned with something timeless, and time itself bends around you now. The divine doesn't just send you messages, it flows through you. Heaven doesn't just whisper to you, it moves through you. You've become an instrument of higher frequencies, a carrier of peace in a chaotic world. The false voices still linger in others, repeating their patterns, disguising fear as wisdom, control as care, noise as revelation. But you no longer judge them, you observe them. You can see clearly that they speak from pain, not power. They echo confusion because they haven't yet met stillness. And that's where your purpose deepens. You don't fight the false. You embody the true. You don't correct others through confrontation. You heal them through presence. The energy you carry begins to recalibrate spaces. Conversations soften when you speak. Hearts settle when you listen. You don't need to preach. Your calm is the sermon. You'll notice how heaven uses you now in quiet, subtle ways. A stranger meets your gaze and feels understood without a word. A friend comes to you burdened and leaves lighter though you said little. You start to see how divine communication transcends speech. Heaven has turned you into a vessel that speaks in silence, in empathy, in vibration. The same peace that once saved you now moves through you to save others. You no longer wonder if you're hearing heaven correctly. You are heaven's echo now. Every action, every word, every thought becomes a transmission of divine calm. This is how you lead without trying. You don't demand attention, you draw it naturally. You don't seek followers, you attract alignment. Those who are meant to learn from you will feel it. Those who aren't will quietly fade away. You won't have to force relationships anymore. The energy around you will sort them for you. The right ones will stay because they match your frequency. The wrong ones will leave because they can't survive your light. You won't chase either. Peace doesn't chase. It simply radiates, and the world reorganizes itself around it. As this alignment deepens, you'll begin to realize that your old ways of seeking no longer fit you. You won't need to analyze dreams, overthink coincidences, or decode cryptic messages. You'll start to laugh softly at how hard you once tried to understand what was always simple. Heaven's voice was never hiding. It was waiting for you to quiet the world enough to hear it. Now you do. It's not dramatic, it's constant. It doesn't interrupt, it integrates. It doesn't demand, it invites. That's why you can move through chaos without losing your rhythm. The storms still come, but you've learned how to stay dry in the rain. The most powerful realization of all is this: you don't need validation from heaven anymore because you've become validation for others. You no longer beg for signs. You are the sign. The proof of heaven's voice isn't in what you hear, it's in what you've become. The way you breathe, speak, love, forgive, and persevere, that's heaven speaking through form. You are the living evidence that divine alignment exists. You've turned lessons into light, confusion into clarity, fear into faith. You didn't escape darkness, you learned how to illuminate it. Now the false voices can scream and you won't flinch. They can whisper doubts and you'll smile. They can offer imitation and you'll sense it instantly. You've ascended beyond reaction. You've learned to answer chaos with calm. You understand that discernment isn't about rejecting others, it's about staying faithful to your peace. You've become so grounded in truth that deception no longer intimidates you, it educates you. Every false vibration you encounter now becomes a reminder of how far you've come. And that is your freedom, chosen one. The false no longer disturbs you and the true no longer surprises you. You've seen both enough to recognize that light doesn't need to compete, it simply outlasts everything else. You've reached the point where heaven's frequency isn't something you tune into occasionally, it's who you are. Every breath you take is divine rhythm. Every pause is prayer. Every heartbeat is conversation. You no longer search for heaven's voice in the wind, you carry it in your stillness. There comes a point when you stop waiting for heaven to speak because you finally realize it never stopped. It was speaking through every moment, every silence, every heartbeat. You just had to quiet the noise to hear it. Now you've reached the place where guidance is no longer something you seek, it's something you are. You've become fluent in the language of stillness. You can walk through chaos and remain untouched because your peace speaks louder than any voice trying to reach you. You don't chase signs, you don't decode omens, you simply know. And that knowing is sacred. It's the evidence of your transformation. You used to wonder why heaven felt silent in your darkest seasons. But now you understand it wasn't silent, it was waiting for your frequency to rise high enough to match its whisper. You had to learn to differentiate between the voices of fear, ego, and truth. The same light that once guided you now guides through you. You no longer seek purpose, you live it. The words that come from your mouth carry frequency, they heal, they realign, they awaken. You can't unsee what you've seen, and you can't unhear what you've learned. You've been rewired from reaction to revelation. You no longer echo the world, you echo heaven. The voices that once sought to confuse you have gone quiet, not because they stopped speaking, but because you stopped listening. You've risen beyond their reach. You don't battle darkness anymore, you illuminate it by existing. Every breath you take is a declaration that truth still wins. Every step you take is a reminder that peace isn't weakness, it's power in its purest form. The imitation tried to sound divine, but your stillness exposed it. And now, only authenticity can enter your space. So you walk forward, not looking for signs, but being one. You've become the vessel through which heaven communicates, not with thunder, but with calm. You are proof that the divine doesn't always arrive in miracles. Sometimes it arrives quietly, dressed as a person who finally learned to listen. You, the chosen one who once doubted the silence, now is the silence that carries heaven's sound. Not every voice speaking is from heaven, but yours now carries its echo. And when you speak, the false must fall silent. When you move, the noise dissolves. When you breathe, Truth vibrates through everything near you. You've become the living frequency of peace, and that, chosen one, was heaven's plan all along.